friend of mine recently tried to reassure me by saying, radical Muslims are not going to take over this country. Well, not by a military coup, they're not. But they don't have to take us over by force. All they have to do is ever so gradually erode our freedoms and intimidate us into silence. Gradually force us to conform our beliefs and our values to theirs. Gradually indoctrinate our children in an educational system that's so straitjacketed by multiculturalism and political correctness that they're learning more about a whitewashed version of Islam than they are about our own history and culture. Gradually establish parallel communities ruled by Sharia law. Gradually take advantage of our tolerance and our weakness in a myriad of ways until America looks like Europe. Researchers found recently that when just 10% of the population holds an unwavering, unshakable belief, that belief will always eventually be adopted by the majority of the population. 10%. I'm willing to bet that that percentage dips lower if you're talking about a population that is racked by cultural self-doubt, guilt that's induced by decades of multicultural indoctrination. What chance do you think we have against a theocratic ideology with unshakable self-confidence and a burning will to conquer us? So does that mean America is doomed to Islamization? Well, not if we take action right now. Unfortunately, our leaders can't be counted on to lead us. Our golfer-in-chief, Obama, and Vice President Biden don't even believe that we're involved in a clash of civilizations. Actually, I don't either. I believe we're involved in a clash of civilization and barbarism. But they don't even believe in acknowledging the ideology and the enemy. In his remarks in the 10th anniversary of 9/11 recently, Biden described the 9/11 perpetrators as stateless actors. I thought maybe he meant Matt Damon and Sean Penn. From listening to our officials, you would never know that we face a threat of jihad and Sharia. In fact, if this administration has its way, soon it will be illegal to talk about jihad and Sharia critically. That's because Hillary Clinton is hard at work assisting the OIC, the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation. It used to be called the Organization of the Islamic Conference, but I guess cooperation sounds so much more user-friendly. The OIC condemns the Islamophobia that we all suffer from in here as, quote, the worst form of terrorism, unquote. And they have made the criminalization of it their number one priority. So it looks like it's up to you and me instead of our leaders. What can we do? Well, fortunately, our guest of honor here today is here to help. Pamela Geller is the founder and editor of the Atlas Shrugs blog and a columnist for many other websites. She's a regular face and voice in the media raising the alarm about the stealth jihad. She's the executive director of the American Freedom Defense Initiative and SIOA, Stop Islamization of America. She's a recipient of the Freedom Center's Annie Taylor Award for Courage, the public face of the protests against the Ground Zero Mosque, and the co-author of the Post-American Presidency, the Obama administration's War on America. For all this and for her take-no-prisoners style, she is despised and feared by the Islamic supremacists and their leftist support network with whom we are at war. They inundate her with smears and hate. But you know what they say, you draw the most flack when you're directly over the target. Now comes her new book with the provocative title, Stop the Islamization of America, a practical guide to the resistance, which she describes as a handbook for winning the war. Probably everybody in this room is familiar with Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. This is Pamela Geller's Rules for Infidels. Buy it here today if you haven't already, because soon Hillary and the OIC may make it a crime to speak out against jihad. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct privilege to present to you a fearless leader of the resistance, Pamela Geller.
There is a war going on. Primarily, it's a war on the truth. We're engaged in so many battles, it's almost hard to get your arms around it. Today, in New York City, we have, as you know, a bid for a terror statelet at the UN, driven largely by the OIC. The OIC, as Mark so succinctly described, is a collection of 56 countries plus the Palestinian Authority. And they vote as one bloc. They have a parallel set of universal rights at the UN, the Cairo Declaration, under the Sharia. And they are essentially the modern-day universal caliphate, just as the Ottomans. And what they're seeking to do is impose the Sharia. Now, people think that's very far-fetched. You heard Chris Christie call us all crazy. But when you have a president, as I outlined in my first book, The Post-American Presidency, you have a president who is relinquishing American sovereignty and abdicating American hegemony to transnationalism. Well, what is transnationalism? And what is international law? I will tell you what it is. It's the OIC. Increasingly more empowered at the UN, and the more we relinquish American sovereignty to the UN, the more you're going to see of these restrictions on our basic unalienable rights. For example, I have to bring this up because it's happening as we speak. Today's New York Post. There I am. They're running ads in the subway to stop the aid to Israel. Now, frankly, whether these ads should be put in the subways or on the buses is subject to debate. But once they do that, then once you're making it a public forum for free speech, then you have to run a counter ad. I submitted an ad. I tried to make it as benign as possible. No pictures this time of the Muslim armies doing the Heil Hitler. I took them out. I took out actual pictures, and it's just text. And it says this: in any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man. Support Israel, defeat jihad. Okay. So, of course, I can't get my ads up. They have ads that says, end USA to Israel. Now, I don't know about you, but last I looked, UK was in Ireland and the Falklands, Saudi Arabia is, women can't leave the house without a spouse, they can't drive. But Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, who has, by the way, Muslim Knesset members who literally advocate for the end of Israel, this is the object of an ad campaign, which, by the way, is nationwide. I fought it in Seattle. Seattle accepted their ads. Then they got my ads. They said, oh, you know what? We're not going to take political ads anymore. Yeah. So while I would have liked free speech, I believe in free speech. I believe that, the antidote to bad speech is more speech, more give and take. That's why I don't like Quran burnings. I don't believe in it. I'll fight to the death for your right to do it, but we're not Nazis. We don't burn books. We don't have to do that. So now I'm engaged in a lawsuit. This is my lawsuit. This is today's lawsuit with the New York City MTA. Once they're not taking my ad, they're taking sides. Now, freedom of speech under the First Amendment, political speech is the most protected speech. And it protects all ideas, not just ideas that we like. Because then who would decide? The government? The New York City transit system? The UN? So that's the battle that's going on as we speak. I would like to say that yesterday, after a years-long battle, the $10 million lawsuit filed against me by Rivka Barry's attorney. If you're not familiar with Rivka Barry, she was a girl, 17-year-old girl, who converted out of Islam in Ohio. She hid it from her parents. Her mosque spied on her. The community spied on her. Found out she converted to Christianity and told her parents. And her father threatened to kill her. So she ran away. Now, I got onto the story because never are these girls ever found alive. Not Amina and Sarah Saeed, not Noor al-Maliki, not Aqsa Parvez, not Asiya Hassan, none of them. And I started to advocate for Rivka Barry. And it became really a hot-button issue in this country. You could call her anything you wanted. She was a radical Christian. She was nuts. She was because she converted out of Islam. It really showed the media for what they were. And when I was in Florida covering the case to bring her back to the household that threatened to kill her, there were bus ads, proselytizing for Islam, come to Islam. And I said, what about Muslims that want to leave Islam? So I started bus ads saying, leaving Islam? Is your family threatening you? Is there a death threat on your head? And that caused such a brouhaha. Well, we have safe houses. We have safe houses. We have safe houses for these girls. Nobody talks about these girls. But I was offending Muslims. This was everywhere, from the Daily Mail in the UK to France 24 to the New York Times. Everybody was after Geller for these ads. Why? Why does it offend Muslims? If a man is, if I did an ad for spousal abuse, it'd be like all the husbands saying, hey, we're offended by that. Right? Anyone that supported crushing those ads was supporting the death penalty, the Sharia for apostasy. There was nothing wrong with those ads. There are thousands of bodies under porches in Pakistan for this very thing. Thousands of victims of the Sharia for converting out of Islam. We are a nation based on individual rights. This is the premise and the magnificence of this country. The first moral government in the history of man. The first moral government in the history of man based on individual rights. No special rights for special classes. That's what I do. I don't care if you worship a stone. Just don't stone me with it. Yesterday, the $10 million lawsuit filed against me by Rifka Barry's attorney for defamation. That was upwards of $300,000 in legal fees. Thank you, Robert Muse of the Thomas More Law Center and David Yerushalmi for pro bono. Although my experts, I had to hire experts to counter his experts because of the pain and suffering I caused by the things that I said. Well, he dropped the case. It's a huge victory, huge. A huge victory, not for me personally. Yeah, plenty of sleepless nights. But it's a victory for free speech. People will see that you can speak. This is how they shut people up. This is the war on the truth. This is the war on free speech. Hate speech is a euphemism for the blasphemy laws under the Sharia. The blasphemy laws under the Sharia says you cannot offend Islam. You cannot criticize Islam. It doesn't matter if it's the truth. Slander in the West has to be malicious, has to be false, blah, blah, blah. Slander in Islam just has to insult Islam. There is a doctor in Pakistan who was brought up on blasphemy charges because he threw away the business card of a man named Muhammad. So we know that it's used. It's not funny. They want to put him to death. It's used as retribution against non-Muslims. So this is how it's under the guise of, Islamophobia. Islamophobia, let me tell you about Islamophobia. It's very important that you understand what Islamophobia is. According to Abdul Muhammad, who was a prominent member of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, he was present, he says, when they created and invented that term in the, quote, bowels of Muslim think tanks. It is an artificial construct, a fictional construct, devised as a thought-killing artifice to beat up critics of Islam. And it's been very effective. Our politicians are afraid to death to be called Islamophobic. Despite the lack of complete evidence, FBI statistics, as I'm sure you've seen, about Islamophobic crimes, lowest since 2001. Meanwhile, the crimes against the Jews never have been higher. Worldwide, nobody talks about that. Nobody. So there's a reality. There are concretes. Concretes don't exist. I am debating on the Hannity show Michael Gauss, who's telling me that Abbas didn't say we will not recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. He just said this. The man is saying he didn't say it. This is, how in your face the dishonesty is. And they demonize and marginalize and render radioactive truth tellers. This is what they do. Why? So that you are afraid to tell the truth. The reason why I wrote this book is because there is a war in America going on. It's a low-grade civil war. But it's not just the stealth. It's not just the violent jihad. That's easy. That's easy. The Times Square bomber, the Christmas Day bomber, the tree lighting bomber with 25,000 families there, the Christmas balls bomber, the Fort Hood jihadi. This is easy. And what's interesting, again, is that in these cases, the imam, the spiritual advisor to the 9/11 terrorists, the Times Square bomber, the Fort Hood jihadi, was Anwar al-Awlaki. Why is this important? Because Anwar al-Awlaki was the go-to imam for the New York Times and the Washington Post and big media right after 9/11. And when the New York Times was interviewing me for a hit piece, but the picture was good, I said to them, why didn't you ever, where was the mea culpa? Why didn't you ever come out and say, hey, you know what? This is complicated. Here he's talking out of one side of his mouth, ground zero Imam Rauf, talking out of one side of his mouth, speaking for tolerance, while in his book advocating for the most radical and extreme ideology on the planet, the Sharia. This is what they do. They say one, and look, Arafat was doing this, saying one thing to the English press, even in the White House, with Clinton, saying one thing to the English press and one thing to the Arabic press. What's it going to take? What's it going to take? Every single system, government, social, is under attack. Do you ever look at your children or your grandchildren's textbooks, see what they're teaching about Islam? It's dawah. It's proselytizing to Islam. The right was very angry with me for exposing Rick Perry's curriculum, an extensive curriculum on Islam in Texas. I'm sorry. These things have to be exposed. We must vet our candidate. You know why? Because it's so bad that we could get Mickey Mouse into the White House right now. Why not get a right guy? I know he's very pro-Israel. I love that. I do. But it's not enough. Because Bush was very pro-Israel. Bush loved Israel. But every time Israel and jihad conflict, the Jews get thrown under the bus. No good. No more. They would never be making a bid at the UN if we didn't have such a weak president. It is absolutely the fault of the United States of America. This would never have happened under Bush. It wouldn't have. Because we have power. And there are things that we can do. We give $1 billion a year to Gaza. $1 billion, us and the EU. There's an obesity problem in Gaza. I don't jest. Per capita, it's one of the most obese regions in the world. And per capita, they get more in foreign aid than anywhere else in the world. And we're supposed to believe that they need a humanitarian flotilla, filled, of course, with weapons in which to attack Jewish soldiers. The media is the problem. The media is no longer passive. They are an activist organization. They are an activist organization, a propaganda organization, and they are deadly. Deadly. That's why your role is so important in this. I cannot impress upon you enough. You have to go to news sources that you trust. You say, how do I know? You know. Anyone that comes to me that's been reading me knows that I'm consistent, I am reliable, I vet all my stuff. I'm the best because it's all I do. It's all I do. Jihad Watch. You can trust Robert. You get to know who you can trust. How do you trust the media after they didn't even vet Obama? How do you trust the media with everything this man's been doing? They don't report on him in any kind of a accurate or responsible fashion at all. You cannot. Israel's in trouble. Israel's in trouble because the big lie, the Palestinian is the big lie. Here is without a country, without a language, without a flag, without a history, all of a sudden, because Yasser Arafat called it in 1967, all of a sudden it goes, oh, you gotta have a state. Gotta have a state. Meanwhile, from 1948 to 1967, when those territories were Egyptian and Jordanian, respectively, why weren't they clamoring for a state then? It's a completely dishonest construct. Are your children taught about the role of Islam in World War II in school? Are your children taught about the Mufti of Jerusalem, the leader of the Muslim world? Why weren't they held responsible? Why weren't they tried at Nuremberg? The Mufti al-Husseini was responsible for the death of 400,000 Jewish women and children. The Mufti al-Husseini was an officer in the Ottoman Empire during the Armenian genocide. That's where he cut his teeth. In 1921, in 1929, in 1936, he was the leader of the Palestinian Muslims, and they conducted pogrom after pogrom against the Jews in Palestine. Palestine, a name the Romans called Israel to humiliate the Jews. There's no such thing as the Palestinians. The whole thing is a lie. They have never accepted a Jewish state. They will never accept a Jewish state. It is an attack on Islam. The existence of Israel is considered an attack on Muslims. Don't believe me, read the Quran. And if you're going to read the Quran, read the Dawood, D-A-W-O-O-D, Penguin Books translation, because the rest is completely whitewashed. Our schools, our children are under attack. It's a brainwash. You are disarming the children. You are disarming the children with this mush. The Department of Defense. The Department of Defense issues a report after the Fort Hood Jihadi. The Fort Hood Jihadi is a devout Muslim who came out on grand rounds, made a PowerPoint presentation on jihad. I use it when I speak sometimes. It's very succinct. He was wearing the garb of the Shaheed. He was giving out Qurans the morning of his jihad. His business card said Soldier of Allah. And when the Department of Defense issued the final report, nowhere was motivation mentioned. Nowhere was ideology mentioned. Nowhere was jihad. That's your Pentagon. You ask anybody in the country, in a school, on the street, who are you fighting and what are we fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan? They can't answer you. It's one word. It's jihad. They can't answer you. What are our boys doing there? If we're not allowed to say who we're fighting. 9/11 curriculums have been instituted in public schools. It's all about service. What are you doing on 9/11 for the common good? I'm serious. It's all about service and diversity and reconciliation and healing. Excuse me, when I went to school and we learned about December 7th, they didn't teach us about reconciliation and healing. They taught us about a nation united in its resolve to defeat the enemy. And 10 years after December 7th, the Germans and the Japanese were vanquished. 10 years after 9/11, you have a president of the United States issuing guidelines, not to mention Al-Qaeda or ideology or motive, behind the 9/11 attacks. The mosquing of the workplace. Muslim prayer times being imposed on union contracts, forcing non-Muslim workers to lengthen their day. The Heinz Company, who's been extraordinarily generous in extending accommodation to their Muslim workers. And the more you extend, the more that's demanded. Now they're going to be sued because they want to stop the line. They want to stop the line for Muslim prayer times. Mind you, they do not stop the line in Muslim countries. They pray before or they pray after work. It's a way of imposing Islam on the secular marketplace, setting aside prayer spaces for children in public schools, Muslim children, not Christian children, not Jewish children. It's a way of imposing Islam. The Muslim cashiers who are suing Target and Walmart because they won't handle meat that's not halal. It's a way of imposing Islam on a secular marketplace. Suing Disney to wear the hijab, niqab, or burqa. Look, Disney has a dress code since 1957, you know? Don't work at Disney. It's not about that. It's about imposing Islam on the secular marketplace. The U.S. Treasury Department giving seminars in Sharia finance a week after we nationalized some banks. Your taxpayer dollars. Why am I against Sharia finance? Because it has to be halal. That means they cannot invest in pork or alcohol or tobacco or some forms of entertainment. Well, I don't want my taxpayer dollars being used to starve whole American sectors and enrich the jihad. Because we know that 2.5% must go to zakat, must go to Islamic charity. And we know that Islamic charity thinks of jihad as charity. So my point here is that you give me an instance. I did a piece on the Society of Professional Journalists. They are taught how to report on Islam. If there's a terrorist attack, do not mention religious motivation. I got this right off the website, Society of Professional Journalists website. Do not mention religious motivation. If you have to mention religious motivation, because maybe the jihadi was screaming, Allah is greater. Greater than what? What does that mean, Allahu Akbar? Do you know what it means? It means Allah is greater. Greater than what? Greater than your God. So if you have to mention religious motivation, always remember to mention another attack with a different religious motivation. Are you going to have to dig deep on this one? Because I don't see anybody killing the name of Christ or Hashem. So they'll mention, of course, they love, mikveh, he's on the hit parade there. And of course, an abortion doc killing like this. This is manipulation. This is a psyop. This is Goebbels. Now they're giving journalism courses on how to address Islam. These are young journalism students. It's on my site. I took screenshots of everything because what happens is, like with Rick Perry's curriculum, when I run it, they disappear. They disappear off the web. Now, usually the caches are there. And I take screenshots of everything because I know by now. The caches are there. So But even with the Perry curriculum, the caches are gone. Now, look, if Perry, wasn't up to speed and he gets up to speed, I'm open-minded. And mind you, with the exception of Ron Paul, whoever gets the nomination, I will be behind them literally doing cheers. I mean, flipping, yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me. I promise. I mean, if I campaign for McCain, yeah, that's a level of desperation. I mean, really. I mean, the man is advocating for Al Jazeera to be on our broadcast channels. Terror TV. This is really a danger. This is the Muslim Brotherhood channel out of Qatar. This is really a dangerous thing. And if your taxpayer dollars are going to fund it, because it's on PBS channels. Check. Not everywhere yet, but they're coming. It's here in Florida. We don't have it in New York. I'm telling you something. This crowd, in this room, I don't know how many people there are. I don't know how many people are in this room, meaning I don't know who's on your email list. I don't know who you play golf with. I don't know who you play mahjong with. I don't know who you bowl with. I don't know what people do. I'm always working. But that shuffleboard, whatever it is, you have to talk to them. You have to talk to them. It's guerrilla warfare. You must explain. First learn everything, and then our very civilization depends on it. It's like Marx said, you want a cautionary tale, look at Europe. We're doing everything exactly the same. Everything. And I'll tell you something that I find very disconcerting. When Bush was president, I was getting numbers on religious visas, diversity visas, and refugee resettlement. Refugee resettlement is particularly insidious and dangerous because do you know who decides who gets refugee resettlement status in the United States? What group or nationality? The United Nations. The United Nations. The United Nations, which is driven by the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Conference. Didn't you ever wonder why every resolution is against Israel? Meanwhile, they're slaughtering Darfur, slaughtering Christians, animists, and black moderate Muslims, the Arabs. I mean, this is another thing. African Americans should be absolutely standing shoulder to shoulder with us the way they're treated under Islamic rule. It's incredible. But where were the resolutions on Darfur? And all that, the pirates. You know the pirates in Somalia? It's jihad. Period. Everything's been given a new name. Chechnya, Beslan. Remember that terrible attack in Beslan? I mean, again, they cover up. I'm not going to go into, because you're eating, what they did to those children in Beslan. What they did to those children in Beslan. Those hundreds of children. But I'm going to tell you something. Even in your wildest imagination, you don't know. It was all covered up. Shocking. It was jihad. The idea that the U.S. and Europe and NATO would go into Europe against the Serbs, okay? Fight against the Serbian Christians, essentially, yes, for the Muslims. For what? To pave a way for an Islamic State in the heart of Europe. That's what you've done. And when Kosovo declared unilaterally that they would be an independent state, it was immediate that you knew that the Palestinians would do the exact same thing. It is not about land. It is about Islamic anti-Semitism. And it's there. And what I try and do, and my colleagues try and do, is to put the glasses on so that you can see clearly. If you look at these actions against Israel in London, Malmo, Paris, New York, because I cover them, Florida, across the world, when the Muslims and the leftists, their enablers, the Islamic apologists, are protesting Israel, they're always chanting the same thing. Kaiba, Kaiba, Ya Yahud, Seish Muhammad, Sayaud. They were chanting it on the Jihad Flotilla, the Marmara, the Mavi Marmara. Go to YouTube and put in Kaibar, Kaibar, Ya Yahud, and see what comes up. What is Kaibar? Kaibar is evoking the armies of Muhammad when he went into the Arabian Peninsula. You know, Saudi Arabia really is occupied territory. It really belongs to the Jews, but we don't have to split hairs. It's true. And he annihilated a whole tribe of the whole Jewish tribe, the Karaisa tribe. So they're saying Kaiba, Kaiba, yeah. Hey, they're saying Kaiba, Kaiba. Hey, Jews, the armies of Muhammad are coming. This is not about Palestine. This is not about, before there was the establishment of the state of Israel, they were slaughtering They were slaughtering the Jews. The Mufti of Jerusalem had planned to put, he had the blueprints for Auschwitz in Nablus. He lived from 41 to 45 in the absolute lap of luxury on Hitler's dime, and made weekly radio addresses to the Axis powers in the Muslim world. The rhetoric so vile, they make the Nazis look soft. Why aren't our children taught this? Why weren't they put on trial? Why was the Mufti of Jerusalem not only allowed to escape, and he did, France, to the King Farouk's palace in Egypt, but he was actually given the same status as the Jewish agency at the UN when discussing the partition of Israel. Imagine this. Why? I tell you, it all goes back to you cannot insult Islam, you cannot defame Islam, you cannot criticize Islam. And this is something, it's like, look, the Christians and the Jews and non-Muslims have lived under dimitude for centuries. There is a layer. There is a psychological layer that seems to, not me, I mean, I'm quintessentially the post-Dhimmi Jew. You know, and when I speak to Jews, like I had to speak to a Sephardic congregation, they're like, afterwards, they're like, there's 1.5 billion Muslims, shh. I said, no, you shh for too long. I consider myself, and this was the beauty of Israel too. Israel was a post-Dhimmi Jew, where when they were doing business with Muslims, they wouldn't speak Arabic. In the past, of course, they had to. And they were reasserting their right to exist. The problem with Israel is that their hard left makes our left look Reagan-esque. So dangerous. So striking. I mean, the cover of New York Magazine, talk about the American left, this week is America's first Jewish president. And it's the back of Obama's head. Yeah. Now, if you're talking Noam Chomsky or Norm Finkelstein, then maybe you're right. But could you imagine if you put a keffiyeh on the president and said, America's first Muslim president, what would have happened? You have to fight. I wrote this book because this book is a pragmatic primer for patriots. You don't have to have an organization behind you. And I just want to also say something about this organization. It's unmatched. I know them all. I know them behind the scenes, if you know what I mean. And there is no one like the Freedom Center. They are singular and brave, and they back the work, and they stand up. When everybody sits down, they stand up. However you contribute to this organization, you're not giving enough. And I'm not, and believe me, I have no iron in this fire. But I see it. I see who does what. I see when the going gets tough, and it gets going, and it gets going, and it gets hot. They never back down. They don't back down. That's what we need. Because the enemy never backs down. They never surrender. They never give up. They never give up. They never give up. No matter what the loss is. We win, we go home, we think it's over. It's never over. The Ground Zero Mosque, that's a victory. Is it over? I just told you, it's never over. But they lopped off 15 stories. We did that. They were supposed to break ground on September 11, 2011. You know what? They already broke ground on September 11, 2001. Basta. So now they're not building. Now they're not building. Oh, and the media, and they hung up a couple of pictures in the lobby, okay, by a Jewish photographer, by the way, who never took a photograph before. But the Times is all over this photo exhibit by a man who never took a photo before. What photographer would ever get a New York Times review who never took a picture? I'll tell you who. A Jewish photographer who had these pictures of kids, of course, so exploitative, in the lobby of the Ground Zero Mosque building. And the media is lauding it as the opening of the Islamic Center. I'm telling you, it's an imaginary opening. It's the emperor's new clothes. That building has been opened. They've been praying in there for months. It's nothing. Do not believe anything that you read. It's a lie. It's a lie to club you over the head like a baby seal. You have to go to trusted sources. This is war. I cannot impress this upon you enough. This is low-grade war, but it's not going to get easier. What's happening in the Middle East may seem far away to you, but I'm telling you, the catastrophic consequences of what is going on in the Middle East cannot be imagined. The rise of Islamic supremacism and the Muslim Brotherhood over secular, it was only secular regimes. Only. Mubarak, not perfect. Who's perfect? He outlawed the Brotherhood. Who invited the Brotherhood back to Egypt? If I'm going long, just tell me because I didn't take my watch off. Obama. Obama invited the Muslim Brotherhood in June 2009 to hear his speech. Sheikh Qaradawi is there now. In Libya, what are we doing in Libya? We got boots on the ground there now for Al-Qaeda and jihadists. Now you could say, well, you know, Pamela, hindsight my eye. I called it back in March. And I'm not inside anywhere. I have no contacts into the FBI, NSA, CIA. It was there. The Muslim Brotherhood, I called it in January of 2011. It was there. Israel is alone. Really alone. Really scary. And if anybody really thinks that it ends with Israel, she's the appetizer. This has been the objective of Islamic imperialism for centuries. But of course, Islamic imperialism was on the decline for centuries. The Ottoman Empire was on the decline, and then of course the Brits dealt it its final blow. But we resurrected it in the 70s. We resurrected it with petrol dollars. We resurrected it when President Carter threw away our ally, the Shah, with both hands and embraced the Ayatollah Khomeini, who thanked us by, killing 241 of our Marines back in 81, Marine bombing. They've been at war with us since 79, and we had a historic opportunity in June 2009. Did you see those riots? No, because the media didn't show you, but it was all on my site. I was getting Twitterers, people I never heard from again, with pictures. It was unbelievable. First of all, it was women. It was a women's revolution. There was lipstick. You never see that. There was eyeliner. There was high heels and hijab. So what? There was Zoroastrians, Persians. Everybody was in the street, and he ignored it. That will always be a stain on American history, like the Hungarian revolts too, and Bay of Pigs. But this is really tragic because this is worldwide. They are Hezbollah. They are supporting Hamas. They are partnering with Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. They are agitating in Bahrain. They are killing our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are supporting Taliban. You could have cut the head of the snake. The world would have been a completely different place. Instead, we threw our allies. Notice that all this agitation is in U.S. allied countries, Muslim countries. So what you're seeing now, it's not static, it's fluid. And the weaker we appear, remember, while the president is somewhat platonic, I should say, yeah, he doesn't believe. I think he thinks the world is a happy place, And if he saunters in with that smile and that savoir-faire, all will be right with the world. But it's not so. Peace is a parenthesis. The world is chaos. And we've been living on the fumes of the greatest generation that defeated evil for decades now. But I'm going to tell you, just as we loved our grandparents and our parents, our children and our grandchildren are going to despise us for leaving them held hostage by nuclear rogue regimes. That is absolutely going to happen. Nothing happens for decades, and decades happen in a day. So I urge you to talk to your grandchildren. Talk to them. Talk to your friends. It's like, I understand. I really think that people are waking up. I think it's painfully apparent with the Ground Zero mosque. It's like the American people are Helen Keller and someone moved the furniture. And so this is Braille, I'm serious. They know something's wrong. They know they're being lied to. None of the big talkers, and I love them all. I love Rush and I love Levin. They don't talk about this. So afraid are they. This is not a religious issue. This is a political issue. The religion is the beard. It's a military system. It's a legal system. It's a dietary system. It's a social system. It's a complete system. And it is the first, Muslims are the first immigrant group that have come to this country with a ready-made model of society that they think is superior. We have seen it everywhere. And it's happening here. So I urge you, yes, to get the book. I urge you to get the book because you have to fight. You have to fight the mosquing of your town. You have to fight the mosquing of your school. You have to fight the mosquing of your neighborhood. You have to go after and support candidates like Ilario Pantano that don't back down. Herman Cain, he said some great things. The Muslim Brotherhood demanded to have some meetings with him. The proxies in America, ISNA, ICNA, CARE, all of them. And he walks out, he says, Muslims are the most oppressed people, just like the Southern blacks, before the Civil Rights Movement. No. We need a leader. We need someone with political will. I believe the country is ready. Let us not squander this opportunity. No. Let's vet the man. I love Santorum, but I don't see him catching fire. He gets it. Now, people say, oh, but the fiscal is easy. We're all fiscal conservatives. We're all individuals. We all believe in individualism over collectivism. That's who we are. That's easy. And it's also easy to be pro-Israel in the Republicans. Over 80% of Republicans are very pro-Israel. It's like shooting goldfish in a barrel. It's not enough. You have to stand up for the Jews against Islamic anti-Semitism. And you have to call it that. Yes, because that's what it is. Who made it verboten to say it? The Sharia. You're not allowed to talk about it. The Christians in Egypt, how they're being slaughtered. In moderate Muslim countries like Malaysia, they're burning down churches. Why? Because the Christians actually use the word Allah for God. You did what? Let's cut off some arms and legs and burn your churches down. They're killing Christians in Nigeria, Thailand. This is a global jihad. How many people have to be slaughtered? How many Christians have to be slaughtered? How many Jews have to die? How many Hindus? 80 million Hindus over the course of the past centuries. Pakistan wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. I don't know. Kashmir too. Every single time, there's always a point. Look at Sudan. Now, this was a beautiful moment, Sudan. Southern Sudan voted for independence. What were they voting for? They were voting to remove themselves from the Islamic North. So now there's regions, we have to go to war. They're going to because there's a region there that they want. Always. Always. Do not believe Islamophobia. This country is the most wonderful place for Muslims in the world, standard of living, freedoms, and so on and so forth. My point is, you have to check your premise. And if something doesn't work, then your premise is false. I don't have to check my premise. I know that I'm right. I know I'm right. And I believe, I don't care who's talking, I would stand up for the Ku Klux Klan if they wanted to march. Yes, yes, because my ideas are better than the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not worried. But when they try and stop me, or they silence me, or they render me radioactive, I mean, people are afraid of me. I'm the sweetest person I know. I'm fighting for everybody. I'm fighting for the smallest minority in the world, the individual. And I ask you to join this fight. No one is going to save you. You are going to save you, and you are going to save your children. And it's worth fighting for. It's worth dying for. On that, I'll take questions. I think I'm okay for time. Yes, sir. Okay. First of all, those groups, Soros-funded groups, have an enormous amount of money. That report was so egregious and false. 42 million to how many groups over how many decades? The one thing we don't have, truthfully, is money. All these things that I do, the ads, I mean, it's totally hand to mouth. I have to thank the Harwood Center when I had to come up with $30K to pay for an expert witness in this lawsuit. Got behind. I'm sure you guys got a mailing on it. So it's particularly egregious. So just so that you know the falsity of the report. What they're trying to do is make it toxic for anybody with money. Oh, I don't want to give money because I may be named as a racist, Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigot. I'm not going to give any money. It's better to stay quiet. That's what that report was about. The reason why I'm not prominently mentioned is because nobody gives me money. So there was no money there. You know, but the Southern Poverty Law Center named me the #1 hater in America. And it's a Orwellian. Lovers are haters and haters are lovers. To your point about the left, I think you have to understand that the left always aligns itself with the totalitarian ideology of the day. If it's not communism, it's Stalinism. If it's not Stalinism, it's National Socialism, Nazism. What it really is individualism versus collectivism. And I think that they have aligned in this with Islamic supremacists because the Sharia is the ultimate control of the people. Of course it makes no sense. Oh my God. First of all, the feminists, where are they on clitorectomies? Where are they on honor killings? Where are they on the subjugation of women? Where are they on the oppression of women? Where are they that a woman's testimony is worth half of a man? I mean, oh my God. Where are they in America where they're covering up honor killings in Dearborn? There's a lawsuit filed in Dearborn because they're covering up honor killings. Here in Florida, Fatima Abdullah was honor killed. She was murdered. She was terrified of her family. They wouldn't let her leave the house. She could drive, wouldn't let her leave the house. This is Tampa, big Muslim population. She would go to talk to her neighbor. She would go talk to her neighbor and she'd say her brother did unspeakable things to her. They were ashamed of her. She brought dishonor on the family because she got divorced, blah, blah, blah. And mind you, she didn't even start the divorce. She was divorced because she couldn't have children. So he divorced her. You know how you get divorced in Islam, right? A man. Says, I divorced you 3 times. A woman has to hang herself from a God only knows where. She can't get a divorce. But this is, where are the feminists? I'll tell you where they are. They're full of it. Because feminism, well, first of all, I'm a bit of a male chauvinist, so I should preface my remarks by telling you that. But feminism is rooted in a Lenin Marxist ideology. It's not about empowering women. You don't talk about empowering women and then say, I want government entitlements. That's not empowering, okay? The gays are particularly, egregious to me because the group that, to this day, my mouth is agape, is Queers for Palestine. Do you know what they do to queers in Palestine? I know this from a couple of French reporters that I'm in contact with. They won't run the pictures, but they take a razor blade around the face and they rip the face off. This is what they do in Gaza. In Iran, as you know, they hang them, and this you can just Google Iran public hanging, by cherry pickers in the public square, and they leave them there all day so that you know. And you'll have Colombia welcoming an Ahmadinejad, who says to their face when they say, your reputation with gays is not particularly good. How do you answer that? Please lie to me. Please lie to me. He doesn't lie. He says, we have no gays in my country. Yeah, because they kill them. So it's again, I don't, they forgave the 100 million deaths under Stalin. He's still he's a revered character in uber left circles. They're completely illogical. They're completely irrational. I don't look to the left for anything. Except music, and even then it's painful to listen. Yes, sir. I am open to Perry. When I say systemic sedition, when you have a governor impose an entire curriculum based on Islam, and I ran the whole curriculum, I said, don't listen to me, read this curriculum. How much time are children spending on this curriculum when you consider that SAT scores have been the lowest in 30 years? We're spending more per child than any other country in the industrialized world. We are ranked 30th and 33rd in math and science. What are you teaching Islam for? And proselytizing to the children? Are you doing it with Judaism? Are you doing it with Christianity? Are you doing it with Hinduism? Why that? Why even go there? Why do it? Why not just say, no, separation of mosque and state? I'm not going to teach that in the schools. It, to me, is a fundamentally fatal flaw. Now, if Perry comes out and addresses it, he needs to, in my opinion, he needs to address it. Like I said, it's very easy to say I love Israel. That's not good enough for me anymore. Bush loved Israel. But when it got hot, meaning when there was a battle in the Bush administration. You had the delicious group, Rumsfeld, Bolton, Cheney, they were really American heroes. And then you had the soft rhinos, Colin Powell, Hadley, Condi Rice, Nick Burns. And after the 2006 election, Bush lost his mojo. He just did. You can't take on a Bush doctrine and then do it limp-wristed. You can't say you're either with us or against us. Okay, exclusionary rule over here. You can't do that. I think it was a brilliant, I thought it was a brilliant foreign policy. I think him saying that it was a religion of peace was Grover Norquist, who, by the way, Perry is very tight with. That's another problem. Grover Norquist, now, if one more person tells me how fiscally, wonderful he is, that's his mosque. That's his mask. He's a very dangerous man. He has an enormous amount of money. He gets to politicians' newbies right away. He owns them. And he's tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. I ran checks from Al-Moody. Al-Moody was the #1 Al-Qaeda fundraiser. Don't listen to me. Go online. I don't think Palin is tight with Norquist. I don't think Santorum is tight with Norquist. I don't think. I sort of lost it for Kane. You don't have to be tight with Norquist. Why do you have to be tight with Norquist? That's a corruption that I will not sanction. If you didn't know, then when you hear, you say, "What is this about? Let me look into it." Now they certainly have resources that I don't. I'm a girl with a computer. That's it. But everything's online today. Everything's online. And so, listen, I would like listen, I want to like him, okay? I want to like the candidate. Trust me on this. But he's going to have to answer. He's going to have to answer for what he did. And I think the connection to Grover. And it's not just like you can say, well, everybody's sort of connected. They vacay together. That's different. Went to Bahamas and so on and so forth. Spoke at fundraisers for Grover. That's not your, kind of CPAC passing, two ships passing in the night. Oh, no. Listen, you want to hear David on Grover, okay? You listen to David Horowitz at CPAC, okay? In 2000, was it 2010? I mean, let me just say, if he was, he certainly made, he did plenty of Hail Marys on that one, because he was amazing on, and what was he? He was at CPAC. I was taking a ton of heat for holding these parallel events to teach about jihad. They won't talk about jihad at CPAC because of his pervasive influence. So you have 12,000 people coming to Washington, ready to get, like juiced and give me the information, and they never talk about. They never talk about jihad. They have Ron Paul's anti-war thing. So I had a political jihad with Steve Coughlin, Alan West, Simon Dang, Annis Gravis. But, David Horowitz, he ain't shilling for Grover. And I think that a lot of people were fooled by Grover originally. But once those checks from the Muslim Brotherhood made out to Grover were made public, that was deeply troubling. And then, of course, everything he says, the Patriot Act is terrible, Gitmo is terrible, everything that we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, he is a stealth jihadist. And he's so good fiscally that you want to like him. But I think that's easy. Low taxes, individual rights, money for defense. There you go. I'll run for president. Okay. Is that it? Any other questions? We're good?
We have time for
one more. He was questioning how, with all that's going on with the Islamic winter, which he affectionately called the Arab Spring, and what's going on across the, well, it's the rise of Islamic supremacism. How close are we to a worldwide, war or conflagration? And I would say to you, I can't give you a date, but it's obvious. I mean, it's as obvious as it was in 38 and 33 and 35. And if you look at the posters for Hitler, I happened to be looking for something, and I found these campaign posters for Hitler. And what is Hitler campaigning on? Peace and equality. The only thing missing was social justice. But that's in his speeches. So my answer to you is I can't give you a date, but it's obvious. It's obvious. And he also said, and can we win? Let me say this. There's no doubt in my mind that we are winners. We are the most unique and a magnificent experiment in human history. Seriously. This idea that a government based on individual rights, everything noble and just and magnificent we achieved was a logical fidelity to that principle. That's not what worries me. And the fanaticism of the enemy doesn't worry me. It's the confusion on our side. That's why when I say first learn everything, that's why it's so critical that you learn everything and stop giving a free pass to things that are fundamentally and absolutely wrong. In any compromise between good and evil, evil profits. Thank you.